see here. Yada, yada, yada. And we are live. Why didn't you tell me we were live? What is this on the teleprompter?
We'll do it live. Okay. No. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Let's listen to that one more time.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Hello, internet world. Again, this is JR and you're listening to the Mental Meritocracy podcast. This is a live stream. Just finishing work here on a Friday afternoon. And about to do this live debate with Team Skeptic. I think Fight the Flat Earth is going to be there. There's going to be a couple other people there. I really wish I knew exactly who they were, but Team Skeptic was not being quite clear when I asked him 3 different times. He gave me 3 different answers to describe the people 3 different ways. So we'll see what comes my way. I'm not at all worried about it. I think they try to intimidate me with these people are all working on their degrees. He did not say any of them have their degree. A physicist, a chemist, a chemistry, and a biology student. So it should be quite interesting because we're going to get into a little bit of physics and a little bit of scientific theory. They're going to try and hit me with data, the same data that they try and hit you with all over the place, and we're going to combat that. We're going to invalidate their data. We're going to look at how the data was collected, and then we're going to come to the conclusion that data is not necessarily forthright and accurate. And then we're going to invalidate it. And I don't care if they're listening to this or not, my objective would be to get them to agree to put the data aside, in my terms, because A, it's invalid, B, it doesn't matter. We're looking for a scientific. I sound really, really smart, guys. A scientific explanation for why global warming happens and how adding CO2 emissions to the planet would in any way raise the temperature. It doesn't matter what the data says. We know that the Earth has warming cycles and cooling cycles and hot, dry periods. I might want to look up the actual scientific term for the opposite of an ice age. When everything's hot and dry and the water's all evaporated and in the sky and the oceans, you can walk across them. I don't quite remember anybody talking about that fossil record. Not sure that that's ever happened, but we have had 5 major ice age and a plethora of mini ice ages where the temperature has dipped, which to me is a far greater risk is the temperatures dropping. Either way, I mean, I guess the better of the 2 options would be global warming, because then it would get too hot on the equator and people would move to the other 80 to 90%. Whereas if you went the opposite direction and you froze all the way down to the 33rd parallel or around Texas, I don't know my European geography, but if you come down to that parallel, right, and you said everything south of or north of Dallas, Texas is going to be a giant glacier with skyscrapers knocked over where we've put them up, foolishly thinking that we were smarter or more powerful than the Earth, and yeah, it's freezing cold in Dallas, and it's just bearable on the equator. That's a far far greater risk because most of the equator is water, if you didn't know that. And so the land density would inevitably cause a population crisis. So that's a far bigger risk, is that the earth gets so cold that it can't be inhabited for 90%, as opposed to the earth gets so hot that some of it is uninhabitable. So we'll go through all of that. Like I said, that we're going to focus on how do they collect the data? How do they determine the world's global temperature? Is there certain times of each day that they do it? Do they do it periodically? Do they do 10 sensors a day in each region? How do they compare that year over year? What is the we'll look at all of that and try and determine exactly what they mean by global warming. How significant is it? How come they don't have a good predictive model? Where is the turn? And then we're going to focus on the science. This is the far stronger argument, because you can do any Google search or anything else. The algorithms have any kind of descent buried, and that's not necessarily because it's the least popular or whatnot. You could, if there's 40 million, the global warming, they use the keywords throughout the article, and then there's 1 million global warming truthers. I don't want to. I am a climate denier, you guys. I am a climate denier. Hi, my name's JR, and I'm a climate denier. It started out back in high school, and something just didn't make sense about what they said, and kind of the way they explained it, and then how they explained other things that seemed to contradict what they said. Things like photosynthesis, and that plants use carbon dioxide to breathe, and they basically breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out air. Essentially, they're the anti-human. They're the opposite. So, and then upon further research, you run across this nagging, unsatisfiable. There's no explanation on how they can beat this, right? And it's a two-part equation for them to try and solve. And I'm gonna try and ask this question and allow them to answer it, and see if they can answer it without violating any other laws of physics and any other universal scientific laws. So the first one that you run into, so they're going to say greenhouse gas theory. It's the only way that for the political agenda that's behind global warming and the overblown importance and overblown hysteria over global warming is emissions, because that's what is visible. That's what you can make people feel bad about. You can make people change their behavior. It's a great behavioral control mechanism, right? If they can talk you into having one car, if they can talk you, convince you that you should only have one car, and that you should move into the city and hoard yourself in with the rest of the millions and millions of people in the masses, then it's a lot easier to put in rules. You'll notice this by looking at the additional rules that there are in cities as opposed to living out in the country. I just don't want to give out too much information about where I live, but I live on basically the border of civilization. So there's subdivisions, very nice subdivisions, brand new houses, neighborhoods going up. But if you travel any further, then you get into some desolate territory, which has advantages and disadvantages, right? There's not a McDonald's around here anywhere. The only fast food around me is a Sonic, and it is the absolute slowest Sonic known to man. Like 15 minutes to get a milkshake or something like that. Ridiculous. You can't get in and out of there in less than 15 minutes. So, anyways, it's a little bit of a personal rant, but we're going to get in, and like I said, we're going to get into the science of why it doesn't work. If they say greenhouse gas theory, that's the theory that, the pollution and the carbon dioxide in the air is blocking out the sun, and it is, I'm sorry, not blocking out, but it actually is intensifying it, because the light that gets through then bounces off of the earth and then is reflected back down to the earth by the immense amount of carbon in the air. So this can't work, because if you're saying that the carbon blocks, right? Boom, boom, block that sun, keep it on the earth. Then you have to agree that it would block the other way, and it would prevent sunlight from entering the earth. So in what they call the Earth's energy balance, how much radiation we receive versus how much radiation we emit, right? That's what we contain in our atmosphere, right? And they're saying that more CO2 in the air would increase the amount of that ratio or whatever. So we would retain more units of energy and radiation via the sun and the energy that it gives off. But like I said, the problem with that is no matter what ratio you give, we could go as high as 9 out of 10, right? 90%. And in fact, here, let me show you how 90% works. Because that's, if we said that the Earth radiates 90%, so it's very small margins and we can change it. But I'll show you the margins would always stay the same because it's fractal and it's math. But the number of units would actually go down. So let's say 90 and 100. So the first day you have 100 units of sunlight, you radiate 90 units out. So you have a net gain of 10, right? So the next day you block out, all this carbon appears in the atmosphere and you block out half of it, right? So you block out 50 units of sunlight, and then you only block out 45, and then you still radiate out 45 units of heat. This is just to simplify the math. This isn't to use scientific terms to describe it, right? So you have a net gain of 5 units instead of 10 units. And it's fractal, so any amount that you try and do, you want to lower it down to 1%, you want to add it up to 99%, you want to go all the way up to 99.9%, and then go up to millions of units of energy coming off the sun. You're still going to run into the same problem, that you're blocking out more energy than you would have released. So, because you can't release the energy that's not there, so it's always going to be, even if we were extremely efficient at releasing all of the radiation that we received every day, we would still be a little bit behind, because you can never release more energy than what you received, right? You can't pay someone $1.50 if you only have $1. So you run into an Earth's energy balance issue with that equation, that it actually traps it, right? Then you run into the problem that when you're talking about electromagnetic wave theory, right? You have to realize that infrared and things on the Roy instead of the G-bib side of the light scale are they're longer wavelengths. So the bluer the light, or the more intense the light, the more you get closer to ultraviolet light, the shorter the wavelength. The more intense, the more times it more wavelengths, but the shorter each wavelength is, right? So if you can imagine in steps, if you're taking red steps, you're going as far as you can go, and you're taking ultraviolet steps, you're taking as small as steps as you can go. So the ultraviolet light, because it's a shorter wavelength, is a lot more susceptible to being blocked by even cosmic dust, and in this case, what we would be saying is the carbon in the atmosphere. It would be easier to block out the ultraviolet light, which is hotter and more intense, and it would be harder for it to block out the infrared, so more infrared would get in, which is actually at a lower temperature, a lower frequency than the ultraviolet. So in that way, the Earth also cools, right? So that really describes how that portion of greenhouse gas theory is wrong. Now, second form of how greenhouse gas theory is wrong is our atmosphere is all air. I mean, there's water vapor, there's other things in our atmosphere, but it's all a gaseous substance. So we've heard the term hot air rises, right? So even if somehow, some way, we magnified the sunlight and we heated up the Earth's surface, as that emits out in infrared radiation, right? As that the heat from the Earth, that the air temperature that we feel, would then raise up through our atmosphere, and at some point they say that it would be pushed back down. Which, if it was pushed back down, you would create a convection, which is how our sun works and why it burns so hot enough to go through nuclear fusion, fission, whatever. So our atmosphere does not do that. Carbon in the air does not reflect the heat back down, and it can't. Okay, that violates the laws of thermodynamics, because part of that is the air above in the top of the atmosphere, as you go higher, gets cooler, right? And so as it gets cooler, hot air rises. So that hot air is going to rise up, and for it to be hot enough to push it back down, it would have to be something that's hotter than the air that's rising to force it back down to the ground, because we're talking about air. It's going to find hot air rises, cold air lowers to the ground. So because there's nothing above it that's hotter, it would just keep rising until it cooled off to the temperature that it rose to. As the colder temperature, just like if you put something in the refrigerator, it gets so cold, you put it in the freezer, it gets colder, right? The first level, as it goes, it's hitting colder air, and that air is warming up, is cooling off the pocket of hot air that's rising. So eventually it gets to the top and it comes back down. The air does. So again, the laws of thermodynamics, something colder cannot warm something hotter, eliminates the possibility of our atmosphere creating a convection. It just simply does. Because if it didn't, then it would, again, make the Earth cool, because it wouldn't allow that hot air to go through to get down to the Earth's surface to heat us up and to keep all of our plants and our animals and sustain life on planet Earth. Again, the blocking out of the sun and the cooling off of Earth is far more dangerous to the animal world than it could ever be, than heating could ever be. We could adjust either way, but that's how they're gonna try and say, hey, look, you're stupid, you're not smart, these are fucking scientists, and listen to what the fuck they say. Greenhouse gas theory, duh. Greenhouse gas theory, duh. They've already did it. NASA did it. Well, why is NASA not discovering space? Why are they doing global warming? Look at the logic here. Why is NASA involved in global warming? We have other agencies, and we could run that in so many different ways. But we don't. Because we need NASA to do something, because they're not doing anything in outer space. That's my opinion. That's a totally different subject. Totally different subject. I don't know who's going to listen to this and if it'll give it away. So, by the way, they're going to ask me what the interior angle of a 1 by 1 by 1 inch triangle is. And I'm going to go, and I'm going to act like I don't know. I know it's 60 degrees, but I'm going to act like I don't know just to throw them off of their game just a little bit. So that's what I'm going to try and keep them off their game for a little while. They'll eventually catch on that they're not talking to an idiot, right? That's just kind of the way it goes sometimes. But again, that's going to be on Team Skeptics channel at 6:30, so about 2 hours from now. I do have to get a little bit of food in me before then. I'm on, 15-hour fast right now. And let's see here. Just pulled the stream up on my phone to see if anybody is actually watching. But I'm going to publish this. This is more for when people come check out later on tonight and be like, hey, does this guy know, did he think about this beforehand? Or did he think about this while he was talking about it? And I promise you I've thought about this probably a little bit too much. It's probably unhealthy as the amount that I've thought of this kind of stupid stuff before or in the past. And, it none of it makes sense. Sometimes you have to think about something until it makes sense. And as of right now, they can't make any of it make sense. And there's a reason why it can't make any sense. It's because everything that they're suggesting is the opposite of what would happen is if what they said is happening. Now, we haven't even talked about the beautiful side of this. I watched an experiment. Gosh, I don't know. Probably going on 15 years ago when YouTube was just beginning. And this is how long I've been interested in it. And so it was debunking, again, the greenhouse gas theory. And it was using, I don't remember the theory that's out there, but essentially the theory goes something like this. That wild plants and animals will grow and will multiply until their food supply runs out, right? So carbon dioxide is a food source to trees and plants and everything else. So what they did is they did a 30-day, is either 2-week or 30-day experiment, and they built a little greenhouse, probably the size of like a guinea pig cage. They planted 2 plants in each one. One of them they cut a hole in and they rigged up the exhaust of a weed eater motor, and they ran the weed eater motor for 12 hours a day. Right? It's not a very big size area, and again they would run the weed eater motor for 8 to 12 hours a day, and on the other one they didn't run anything. Right? And I don't know what you would imagine, because I know a lot of people have already set their mind on this subject, but you would be surprised to know that the 2 plants with the weed eater motor growing in it grew 6 times the amount of the plants with no weed eater motor in it. The explanation of this is quite simple. They had more food. Part of the reason why Americans and really a world trend is that people are carrying more body fat on them. They're more obese. We do less physical activity and we eat more food. So this is what I was talking about. I'm on my fast. This is more something that our bodies are used to when you look back over the course of thousands of years. Before there was a grocery store and a refrigerator to store food and to have food readily available, you had to be ready to eat food. You had to kill your food. You had to eat it. You had to be a lot more resourceful about food and everything else like that. Sometimes you didn't get to eat, and that's just the way life was, and that's okay. Your body is perfectly fine living under those circumstances, so that's not something to worry about. Sorry, I had to get a little cough out there. That's not something that you necessarily have to worry about. But what it is, and where I think where I think life is that the trend is that people are bigger because they have more food. They have a ready supply, an abundant supply of food, and in some ways it's tremendous and great. And I obviously have a child, so I have food at my house at all times, and milk. And by the way, here's the pro tip of the day. If you're lactose intolerant like me, or you don't just drink milk, here is the absolute motherfucking pro tip that nobody will motherfucking tell you. Thanks, Mom. So, if you buy organic milk, yeah, the motherfucker's like $3 for a half gallon. Right? And you're like, oh my gosh, that shit's ridiculous. Nah, motherfucker, because that shit doesn't expire for 2.5 months. So you can spend $1.25 5 times, 6 times, because you have to cook macaroni and cheese once a week, and then the milk goes bad and you didn't use it because you don't fucking drink milk because the shit's fucking nasty, right? But you need it to cook every once in a while. Or what you can do is spend $3.50, have the organic milk, motherfucker lasts 2.5 months. By the time that 2.5 months rolls by, you're almost done with the damn thing. You ain't even got to make the cows work for nothing. Because me, I'm just making cows work for, give me a gallon of your shit for a week for nothing. I ain't even going to use it. Sometimes I don't even open the shit. I suppose, like, I know some people freeze milk or some nasty shit like that. Nah, I'm good. I'm going to use that organic shit. That shit's going to last like 3.5 weeks. That's the pro tip of the day. But the good news is that your car's exhaust and the factory, the pipe coming up out of the factory and all of that, and it does have some health concerns. It's not that we don't need to try and keep our environment clean, which is funny because most of the people who are climate deniers, if you take them fishing, they're going to either eat their fish or they're going to release it. They're going to clean up their campsite. They're going to, when they're in the outdoors, they're the ones that take care of shit. I promise you. I promise you. So here's another. Okay, so everything is works as plant food. It's why the Amazon rainforest was coming back at such a tremendous rate before they decided that, or found out that you could factory farm the shit out of it and have the best soil on the planet Earth. Then now we're running into deforestation again, and back to the issues that we had in the 90s, right? Real issues. But however, before that was done, and even in parts that are untouched, the rainforest is coming back at rates they never imagined because they're feeding it. It's feeding because there are more carbon emissions. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not a science denier. What I am is a skeptic that what you say is happening is what's actually happening. We could be just being a global warming period. And again, there's such misinformation on the data. For instance, if you look at all the data, you'll see a big change from 1978 to 1982, somewhere in that range, depending on which chart you look at. Yeah, that's the time that they switched over, changed technologies in the way that they were testing the temperature. But they always do it from zero. They don't do it from the year before, so they always do it from the common average or whatever. So that line still looks like it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and way bigger and never comes back down to the baseline. Well, it's not going to, because you changed the way that you measured. So if it came back down to the baseline, then what you would have is an 8 or 10 degree or whatever the degree, that was a bad example, but whatever degree raise that you said would immediately be that below the average, because you're just not zeroing out your scale. You're not tapering your scale. And that's unfortunate. That's why this data is unreliable and unusable for anyone other than the agencies that produce it, because nobody's going to put their name behind the sources and methods in which NASA, the space agency, uses to measure the temperature on Earth. So that's just the change in technology before you get into the airs and and the margin of error. The margin of error is almost always greater than the amount of temperature raised that they say. So by that definition, what their report could be completely accurate, and the temperature on Earth could have gone down. But with a margin of error, it's a little rough the way that they have it, the way that they deliver their data, and that's part of the issue on why people like me are very skeptical of what they say. I was about to get to a point, and I wanted to finish up about how the food, how the carbon works and feeds the food, and how the oceans. I didn't get to how the oceans clean the air through the waves and through weather and everything else, and how carbon's knocked down into the ocean, and then the waves sink it, and then it's more dense. The carbon's more dense than the water, so it sinks to the bottom of the ocean. It drifts down into the abyss where it's compacted, and again, it's turned into carbon. It's a cycle. Everything on Earth is a cycle, from dust to dust. So we have gone almost an hour, and you're going to hear a lot more of this, but just know that, I thought about it, and if you listen to the preview video, you may want to call me a science denier or a climate denier. You may want to think anything you want to think of me, but I guarantee you I've thought more about this subject than you have, and I'm willing to change my mind. The ultimate winner in an argument is the loser, for they've gained knowledge, and the winner has only gained self-righteousness. So if you can show me the errors in my way and how I'm wrong, and why I should trust the data that's presented, and why the law of thermodynamics doesn't apply in this situation, or how wave theory is, how I'm misunderstanding wave theory and refraction and reflection and absorption and black body radiation, and you can try and tell me that I don't understand how it works, and you can try and explain it. And that's really the idea behind my podcast. So I'd highly recommend that anyone who's here just checking it out, come back, and I'm going to do the climate change, global warming debate probably pretty soon. If one of these guys sounds like they present a good argument on it, then perhaps I'll have them come do the conversation. Get someone who's better than me at presenting the evidence the other way, and can get a little bit more into the data and analyzing the data than I can. Have them give their full side, and then bring the two sides together for a debate. That would be tremendous and awesome, and I hope you guys will check back. For now, like, share, subscribe. Nobody's subscribed. I'm the only person who subscribed, and that was on my live stream of the Democratic national debate. What a shit show that thing is. I love politics, and I love watching our politics in action, and the gears of our government move and play out in scenarios that they have in modern times, sometimes in our history. So I'm loving seeing this 20-person debate stage and having people fight it out, and watching how politics really happens. It was interesting in 2016 when Trump won the nomination. Arguably, he doesn't win if he doesn't come out of a field of 16 and doesn't come out swinging, and he doesn't develop that style that ultimately won him the presidency. And I know I'm getting a little political here, but we're going to look at a lot of things like that. So anyone, without sounding too desperate, someone hit that subscribe, hit that like button, check back. Definitely check back on that global warming debate. I guarantee you it will go better if I have someone else present the argument rather than me, and I moderate and ask questions and be inquisitive and be skeptical. So that's all good. I don't know who all watched this because I'm trying the new streaming software, but you guys check back. If you watch this and it's before 6:30 Central Time, then hop over on Team Skeptics page and see how I do in live fire action. All right, you guys have a good one. Have a good weekend. Peace out, motherfuckers. Let's listen to Bill O'Reilly one more time while we on our way out.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.